Hi, my name is Luisa the Jesus, founder and president of LD Human Resources. Welcome to my new show, HR Real Talk. We'll be coming here weekly to answer all of your HR questions in a no-nonsense, no-fluff type of way. We'll also be bringing with us monthly expert guests to help answer those questions. At LD Human Resources, we provide customized HR solutions to small and medium-sized businesses. We believe that your people are your most valuable asset and truly set you apart from your competition. With the right people and the right HR tools, your business will achieve accelerated results. Now let's get to the first topic for today's show. So performance management is the process by which managers and employees work together. And they work together to plan, monitor, review employees' work objectives, and overall kind of contribution to the organization. It's so much more than just the annual performance review when we, sit down around the end of the year and discuss, how things are going. Instead, it's truly an ongoing piece of communication and communications focused process of really, setting those objectives, assessing progress, and providing that ongoing coaching and feedback to really ensure that employees are meeting their objectives of the organization and also their own career goals. So to help us more and learn more about how to do performance management right, I'm excited to have Siobhan Calderbank here with me today. Siobhan is an experienced director of talent management at the LCBO. She's a keynote speaker, recognized learning leader, consultant, and an award-winning author. Siobhan has over 20 years of progressive experience in transforming businesses, leading change, and developing leaders. She's spoken internationally to diverse groups and to thousands of people from over 70 countries at conferences, events, seminars, and planning sessions to really motivate individuals and work more collaboratively with their team members. Welcome, Siobhan, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So I'm going to dive right into the questions of Siobhan. And, performance management is something that I think is so key to every organization. So tell us, from a performance management perspective, it's always necessary and a really good part of an HR strategy for employers. How has COVID impacted both the importance and the structure for effective performance management?
Well, it's affected it in a couple of different ways. I mean, most employees during COVID are struggling through their own personal issues and the isolation and just feeling that sense of security being lost. So when we're focusing very heavily on performance management, it's difficult to get people to that stage because their mindset is still at, if you look at, say, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they're still focused at where am I? I need security and I need to make sure that I'm safe for myself and for my family. And then as you start moving up that hierarchy, there's a deep sense of just wanting to feel belongingness to their peers and to their team and to their manager. So as a manager, it's really important to make them feel that sense of belongingness by checking in with them. At the same time, the business also needs to be able to perform. They need to hold their employees accountable and things need to get done. But then when you're asking them, do they have to get done the same way? Because as we all know, many people are working from home. So work is being done in different ways and still getting it accomplished. So it's actually a great time to revisit those performance objectives and see what are the actual priorities, what's shifted, what's being done a bit differently, and how can we still get to that end result that we're looking for. As long as we're having these open conversations and making sure that people know that you really care about them as an individual first and foremost, then they are going to put out that discretionary effort to be able to get to those performance goals that you set out for them.
That's wonderful. I love how you refer to those basic needs. It's so true. Employees really need to know how they're doing so they can have that opportunity to improve. I always say, like, if they don't know, how do they know to change things? So in your in your opinion, how often should managers and employees actually really talk about performance, both, I guess, formally and informally? And, what should a proper performance management schedule look like?
Well, I firmly believe you should be having informal conversations all the time. I think it's really important for people to get continuous feedback so that they know how are they doing. That's usually one of the number one questions that employees ask. It's how am I doing and how does my job impact the direction of the organization. So they want to see that connection. And the more feedback you can provide, the more adjustments they can make, especially if they're off track. I think it's important to have at least one formal meeting with your employee for the year, ideally two, because at least you have a midpoint so that you can check in. If they're off track, you can kind of provide additional supports and resources to help them get back on track. But by having those continuous meetings, at least that this way, it's not a surprise. Nobody likes to be surprised at the end of the year to find out, hey, I've been working so hard, and only to find out I didn't make any of my performance targets. How's that possible? But if you're having constant communication, even for those who aren't performing, it will be no surprise at the end because they know that you've been having these dialogues and discussions with them and you're pointing out what are areas that they need to work on. And then when we get to that final conversation for the performance review, there's no surprises and everyone's on the same page.
Wonderful. I completely agree. And another area of your expertise is change management. And wow, what a year of change it's been, or 2 years, I should say. So,
yeah.
COVID, who would have thought, right? You've successfully integrated change management strategies in a 4-step process to really increase engagement, innovation, performance, and resilience of your team during these times of disruptive, what we call it disruptive change, right? So can you give us some insight as to the 4-step process and what some of your best recommendations may be for how employers can manage change within the organization? Because, change is obviously constant.
Absolutely. Sometimes I view change sort of like a bit of a gamble. I used to work many years ago for the gaming industry, and I look at change almost like you're kind of throwing the dice. So when you think about it, change, it's like dice would be sort of the acronym. The D's around how do you determine the need and the readiness for change. So there has to be something that's not working or something that can be improved upon. So there's a need, and you need to take into consideration, is the organization ready? Do we have the structures to support? Do we have the resources to support? Can we really make this happen? And it requires you to really express a very compelling vision of what that future state is going to look like. Then the next step is to be able to influence people to commit to change. And this isn't always easy, especially when people tend to be a bit more resistant to change. And when you have a lot of change, people are going through change fatigue. So you want to be very considerate as you're communicating what the change is, and do it in a way that's going to demonstrate compassion and empathy for people to really get them on board. And so they can understand, why is this changing? What's the end state going to look like? And how are you going to support me through this process? Then we move into collaborating and really engaging people to start trying out the new change. So you want to ensure that you're encouraging that engagement level. It's not going to work unless people start to try it and they start getting positive reinforcement that I'm doing a really great job. And then finally, you want to make sure that you're executing a sustainable change plan, which looks at systems and structures and policies and procedures and really just aligning them so that once the change has been implemented, it's going to stick and people don't revert back to old behaviors. And that's really a solid plan for executing a change and basically help you to ace it at the end of the day.
That's a great way to think about it with dice. And I always say it's that buy-in when you talk about influence. It's not going to happen if not everyone's on the same page. So what great advice. And thank you so much. How can people connect with you outside of today's conversation to hear more?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm usually there quite often. So you can find me at Siobhan Calderbank on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Siobhan, for being here today. It's been such a great conversation. I myself have found it so enlightening and supportive, especially when we talk about, how do we effectively deal with performance management in today's day, and that constant change, and really connecting, I think, is the key on an ongoing basis, and definitely checking in all the time, right? Again, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Luisa.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of HR Real Talk. If you like what you heard, be sure to hit the like button and leave us a comment below to let us know what you think. Don't forget to follow us every week to hear more answers to your HR questions. For a free consultation, visit ldhr.ca. We'd love to hear from you. See you next week.